her own flesh and blood. She breaks a sacred bond.
I had to accept that they weren't coming back.
How can we comprehend a woman who drowns her 2 young boys?
In a dark car, they're floating and they're screaming for their mother.
That is not how Jesus teaches us to behave!
A deadly delusion drives a mother to destroy the family she loves.
She held them down. They fought her for their lives.
And a killer mom's lie alters medical history.
His paper was used for almost a quarter of a century as a license to kill.
These are deadly women who murder their own. They are mothers who kill. It's 1964 in upstate New York. Newlyweds Tim and Wanita Hoyt look forward to the birth of their first child.
Wanita said that her mother always told her that she was good for one thing, and that was to make babies, to have children.
Doing well. Have a good day at work.
But none of her children will live for long. She secretly murders them. Her first victim is 3-month-old Eric. Home alone together, Wanita smothers him.
Smothering an infant is, unfortunately, a very easy thing to do, and it shows no marks.
Investigating Wanita's story, husband and wife writing team Jamie Talon and Richard Firstman discover a cold, distant killer.
Wanita didn't seem to grieve as you would expect a mother to grieve.
You know, when you have a baby, you take the baby in your arms, you hold the baby. She would never do that. She was very distant. If you look at pictures, she kept them, you know, at arm's distance.
At the time, Wanita's coldness goes unnoticed. 3 years later, she strikes again, taking 2 lives in just 2 weeks. Her 6-week-old daughter and her 2-year-old son.
I don't think you can even call her a mother. Anybody who takes their children away cannot be called a mother.
No one suspects Wanita, especially her husband, Tim. Instead, murder is misdiagnosed as illness, a frightening new disease taking young children in their sleep. The doctors call it SIDS.
SIDS is sudden infant death syndrome. And basically, this is a diagnosis that is given to children under 1 year of age who die in their crib, who die while they're asleep. The only time a forensic pathologist will certify a death as due to SIDS is when they've ruled out all other possibilities.
Doctors are left trying to explain the deaths rather than police. When Wanita and Tim are expecting their 4th child, one doctor is determined to stop another family tragedy.
Dr. Alfred Steinschneider was sort of recreating his research world to understand why babies die inexplicably for no apparent reason. And along came Wanita Hoyt. Here he could follow the 4th baby, and maybe the key to unraveling SIDS was in his hands.
Wanita's new daughter, Molly, is monitored at Dr. Steinschneider's sleep clinic.
She was a happy little girl. She was just a joy to have around, you know, just a sweet little girl.
Corinne Dower was one of the nurses who cared for baby Molly.
Molly came in as a SIDS patient. We rocked her, we walked her, we fed her, and she was doing well.
So how's she doing today, nurse? She's still responding already. Well, I'll leave you some.
The nurse's only cause for concern is Molly's mother. She seems distant, uncomfortable with intimacy.
She never hugged it, never kissed it, never said, you know, anything. She just... And I thought that's a little strange.
And that's kind of what led them to suspect that there was something else going on here. They have this mother who seems to really have no connection to the baby. And then these babies are dying mysteriously.
The nurses believe this medical investigation should be a murder investigation. Their boss doesn't agree.
Yes, nurse.
I'm really concerned about Wanita Hoyt and her nurse child, Molly.
In what way?
I'm sorry.
The nurses were very vocal in expressing to Dr. Steinschneider what they felt was going on here.
Doctor, it's just too suspicious.
And several of them went to him and said flat out that she's killing her babies.
What are you basing this on, feeling or facts?
Corinne's worst fears unfold.
Enough. Now, I'm very busy, so if you don't mind.
Because Dr. Steinschneider, he discharged her. And I said, if you send her home, that lady is going to kill her. And he said, you're just another hysterical nurse. So what can you do?
Baby Molly Hoyt is sent home with her mother. It would simply be a matter of time.
And then about 11:15, when we were getting ready to go off duty, I said, Joyce, what do you think? Do you think she's still alive? And of course, when I came on duty the next day, she was dead.
Wanita Hoyt has mysteriously lost 4 children in 4 years. Her doctor blames sudden infant death syndrome.
Wasn't he adorable?
Her nurses have the correct diagnosis. This mother is a killer.
No facts involved. These are facts.
The nurses suspected it, but they had no power to investigate.
Look, I've heard enough.
And people didn't want to believe that a mother would kill her own children.
When Wanita has her 5th child, SIDS researcher Dr. Alfred Steinschneider thinks he is on the cusp of medical history.
He was looking for families with these multiple deaths because he wanted to bring the next child into the laboratory to see if there was any way that they could figure out why babies die of SIDS.
The doctor is developing a breakthrough theory that SIDS is hereditary. Wanita Hoyt's tragedy seems the perfect case to prove it.
See you, big fella.
After monitoring the newborn in his clinic, he sends him home with his mother. The nurses protest. But Dr. Steinschneider is determined to prove his theory.
again.
Is there something wrong, Doctor?
They wept when he died.
Noah Hoyt has died.
This one nurse said she couldn't even look at Dr. Steinschneider.
I warned you.
She said, I told you so. I told you so.
Medical research allows another murder.
You really can't distinguish between SIDS and what they call a gentle smothering. So when you don't have any really hard evidence, it's very difficult to make an accusation.
With every tragic death, Wanita Hoyt gets more attention. It's exactly what she wants. She suffers from a disturbing psychological illness, Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
And this is basically where women, it's almost always women, will cause illnesses or even deaths in their own children in order to gain sympathy and attention for themselves. Wanita Hoyt is, you can't think of a more classic case than hers.
But in 1971, Wanita isn't diagnosed or investigated. Dr. Steinschneider publishes her case as proof that SIDS is hereditary. He becomes famous as doctors around the world follow his research.
Steinschneider had the chance to intercede, to save these babies, and yet what he did was take these cases, take these deaths, and turn them into a theory that was fraudulent. So he used these deaths to advance his own career. And there's really nothing more cynical than that.
For the next 22 years, SIDS research is sent off on the wrong track. And Wanita Hoyt, child killer, remains free. Until District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick takes a look at Dr. Steinschneider's research paper.
Pretty obvious to me that they were talking about the murders of 5 children.
Bill Fitzpatrick believes the doctor's theory allowed Wanita and other mothers to murder with impunity.
His paper was used for almost a quarter of a century as a license to kill.
Sergeant, I brought in my photographs of my babies just to show you how beautiful they were.
Aged 46, Wanita Hoyt is called in for an interview.
I was actually watching through a glass partition, and Trooper Mulvey, in a very, very gentle voice, told her, Wanita, you know, this is not the way the kids died.
These are my babies. My babies.
In our wildest dreams, we didn't think we would get a confession. You don't have any crime scene photos. You don't have any eyewitnesses because Wanita was the only one there when the babies died.
You're telling me that this was all coincidence?
And there came a time where she, put her head down for a second. I'll never forget these words. She looked up in a very sorrowful voice and said, I've asked God so many times to forgive me.
In 1995, Wanita Hoyt is convicted of 5 murder counts and sentenced to 75 years in prison. Dr. Steinschneider's theory is in tatters.
SIDS does not run in families, but murder does.
Instead, SIDS research refocuses on infant sleeping positions with amazing success.
They suggested something called the back to sleep movement. And what was found was stunning. The incidence of SIDS dropped from 5.6 per 1,000 deaths to less than 0.5 per 1,000 deaths. In other words, only 1 infant death in 2,000 births. This has been amazing.
In 1998, Wanita Hoyt died in prison of cancer. This murderous mom helped mislead SIDS researchers, costing countless lives. She gave an alibi to other mothers who would kill their babies. And she murdered her own 5 children.
This was a woman who craved a lot of attention. A sad person who nobody really understood the complexity of her sadness until it was too late.
Some mothers murder for attention. Others kill for love while under a deadly delusion. On a summer's morning, a young family are playing happily in their living room. But these 5 children are in terrible danger. Their own mother is tortured by a monstrous urge. She wants to kill them.
There was all these crazy things going through her head, driving her to places that she didn't want to go. No one could believe that a mother would do this.
No one has ever encountered a mother like Andrea Yates.
It was just absolutely incomprehensible. This is the whole symbol of motherly love turned upside down.
To their friends in Houston, Texas, Rusty and Andrea Yates are a loving, devout couple.
I believe we got it right here.
There's no question but that there was a bond of love between the two. Andrea was extremely devoted to Rusty. Everything, at least from the outside looking in, appeared to be as normal as one family could be.
But Rusty Yates has extreme religious views.
This was a guy who firmly believed that women were secondary to their husbands. A woman had to submit to their husband. Their whole purpose in life was to have children. And so, I mean, that's where she had 5, 7 and under. It was whatever God blessed them with, that's what they had.
Now then, you lads, you can call me Sergeant, just like you can call Jesus.
Each of their 5 children is named after a biblical character. Noah, age 7, John, 5, Paul, 3, Luke, 2, and Mary, 6 months.
Jesus looks at us all the time, and he knows when we're bad, and he knows when we're good.
Andrea pays a heavy psychological price for her repeated pregnancies.
Noah! Come back, please. I told you, come back to the circle. Come back here and listen to the story.
Andrea had mental issues before she became the mother of 5 young children. Having all those children added so much stress to her life that her psychiatric illness flourished.
Former FBI profiler Candice DeLong has seen Andrea's illness before, postpartum psychosis.
As a psychiatric nurse, I treated many women who had this disorder.
That's Satan listening to you and talking to you. Now you listen to Mommy.
A woman becomes so severely depressed after the birth of a child that the depression spirals down into a psychosis. They are really out of touch with reality. These women may hear voices or become delusional.
The voices in Andrea's head tell her Satan will take her children.
She thought that she was a bad mother, and because she was a bad mother, all of her children were going to go to hell.
Author Diane Fanning sees each new child adding to Andrea's psychosis.
Russell once found her in a bathroom holding a knife up to her throat and ready to commit suicide.
No!
So she had a serious mental health issue.
That is not the way.
And she was obsessed with these dark, dark thoughts about what a horrible mother she was.
Boys.
And how the little tiny things that her children did were just dreadful, dreadful sins.
Noah!
Because that's what the voices were telling her.
Noah, quit it! That is not how Jesus teaches us to behave!
What about this one?
For 2 years, she is in and out of psychiatric treatment. But the healthcare system limits her stays.
The mental health professionals did not feel that she should be leaving. The insurance ran out, and there was no way they could pay for it without the insurance.
Psychiatrists also warn against having any more babies. Husband Rusty has other ideas. His fundamentalist religion demands another child. After the arrival of Andrea's 5th baby, Mary, she hatches a plan to protect her children. Satan can't take them to hell if she sends them to heaven first.
She loved them so much that she took their lives.
In Houston, Texas, Rusty and Andrea Yates have a new addition to their family. 6-month-old Mary is their 5th child and first daughter. Her birth will trigger a terrible event.
It was a fairly rapid decline in Andrea's mental health after the birth of Mary. It was obvious that she was becoming increasingly ill. And she was spiraling down into this black hole of a psychotic delusion.
Andrea truly believed to the core of her being that she was a bad mother, that the devil was going to get her children and take their souls to hell. The only way to save her children, she believed, was to kill them so their souls would go to heaven to be with Jesus and they would be saved. She believed this with every fiber of her being.
Noah, take that out of your brother's mouth.
On the morning of June 20th, 2001, Andrea acts on her deadly delusion.
Sit down now. Come on, honey. Let's just leave those for kids. Huh? Noah, you come and take charge of your mother, okay? I gotta go, huh?
Rusty kissed the kids goodbye, not realizing that it was the last time he would see them alive. And he leaves for work.
Andrea Yates very carefully filled the bathtub with water.
One by one, Andrea takes her children into the bathroom.
She drowned them in the tub, held them down. They fought her for their lives.
Noah, The eldest is the last of the 5 children to die.
As she drug him back to the bathroom to drown him, he kept saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Because like little children often do, Noah took the guilt onto himself. Because we all, when we're little, think our parents are perfect. And whatever we do, we deserve it.
Tenderly, Andrea places her children's dead bodies together, clasping baby Mary's hand in her brother's.
It's almost as if little brother is taking care of baby sister on the road to eternity. Andrea absolutely believed she was saving their souls. There's no question about it.
Calmly, Andrea calls her husband.
You need to come home.
After Andrea drowned the children, she did not try to cover up her crime. She called the police and told them to come over. She called her husband and told him to come home. Why would she do that if she believed what she had done was wrong? There's no explanation. She wouldn't.
Rusty stands by the wife who murdered his own flesh and blood.
He realizes that mental illness caused what occurred. He's never blamed her for taking the lives of their children.
Under Texan law, Andrea Yates faces death by lethal injection.
She should have been put into a hospital right away, but instead she was put on trial, threatened with a death sentence. She wasn't a heinous capital murderer. She was a sick, sick woman, and she needed help, not the spectacle of a trial.
I don't think a civilized society should ever execute the mentally ill when they are compelled to commit a crime because of their illness.
But she wants to be executed.
She didn't want a trial. She didn't want me as a lawyer. She wanted to go immediately to death row because she believed in her unreal world that Satan lived within her. And by being executed, she would save the world from the devil.
Andrea Yates escapes the death penalty. In March 2002, she is sentenced to life in prison.
There is so much tragedy in the story of Andrea Yates. 5 children had their lives taken away before they really had a chance to live them. That is just so inconceivably horrible. 5 children at once. Andrea, too. She is a victim of her own mental health. She will never, ever recover from this.
A quiet fall night.
Somebody help me, please! Somebody!
Shattered by a mother's frantic screams. Her 2 children have been kidnapped.
A black man's taking my baby! A black man's taking my baby!
She stopped at a traffic light on Highway 49. She said that a man jumped in the car and told her to get out.
Get out the car! Right there! In the back seat!
He just got in the car and drove away. I try not to even think about what those kids faced because it can become overwhelming.
I can't! 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 I can't
town of Union, South Carolina. The kidnapping of Susan Smith's 2 boys grips the country.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I'm Sheriff how well-to-do to me are David and Susan Smith. Their 2 young boys are missing.
Michael Smith is 3 years old. His brother, Alex, just 14 months.
To whoever has our boys, we ask that you please don't hurt them and bring them back.
Their father, David Smith, still feels the pain today.
It's probably the worst gut feeling I'd ever had, and maybe still I've ever had.
Please return our children to us safe and unharmed.
I loved my children very much. And they were, all I had.
The boys disappear at a time when David and Susan's marriage is in trouble.
It was a pretty rocky marriage from the beginning.
She fell for somebody that was actually her supervisor where she worked. And so things started falling apart.
Susan is in love with Tom Findlay, a wealthy local businessman.
So when are we gonna meet next?
Soon. I promise you.
Anytime before the weekend?
In the middle of '94, we decided to separate, and we filed for divorce.
But as the search for their children continues, David and Susan are united in grief. As newspaperman Gary Henderson watches Susan, his reporter's instinct kicks in.
I never saw any real tears. I heard sounds that sounded like someone trying to cry.
I don't know how else to put it, and I can't imagine life without them.
Susan, you know that?
I noticed immediately she was speaking in the past tense, and that sort of sent a flag up for me. Why would you be speaking of these kids in the past tense if you really thought they were still out there alive somewhere?
Law enforcement officers are also skeptical. They put Susan on a lie detector.
Susan continually failed one question on the polygraph. Do you know where your children are?
To me, it was she was failing because she was distraught. She was so upset. She had just had her kids, literally ripped from her.
But prosecutor Tommy Pope is becoming suspicious. Susan keeps changing her story about the carjacking.
So when law enforcement's not getting accurate information by arguably the person that has the most vested interest in giving it to you, naturally questions arise.
Susan, now, we've been over this and over this. I'm not here to hear your story again.
The investigators turned up the heat and really leaned on Susan.
I don't know. Any black man with 2 white boys in the back of his car, they would have seen him.
Because they actually knew that she was lying.
They don't believe your story. They don't believe you're describing a real person.
What they needed to do was get her to confess because they needed to find those boys.
Will you parade with me?
Sheriff Wells utilized a well-known technique in police interrogations, and that is what we call the come to Jesus talk.
Please bless our sons, Michael and Alex. Bring them safely back to you, O Lord.
He appealed to her sense of decency and fear of God to get the truth.
Amen.
After 9 days of lies, Susan admits to the awful truth.
I killed my boy. I drove them into the lake. And I threw them in. I drove them into the lake.
In South Carolina, police have spent 9 days searching for 2 missing boys. But the little boys haven't been kidnapped. They've been murdered, drowned by their own mother.
I had to accept that, we weren't going to find them, that they weren't coming back.
David Smith now knows the terrible truth about what his wife has done.
It was more of a shock when I found out that she had confessed to doing it, because I had stood by her for 9 days, and I believed every story, every lie that she told. I believed her.
It was hard to look at her and believe she could have done something like that. And I think that's what everybody had a problem with.
The vast majority of mothers who kill their children do so accidentally in a fit of rage. They go to hit the child, and they hit the child too hard. That is not what was happening with Susan Smith.
Susan is haunted by a violent past.
Not listen to you anymore. I came in like 5 minutes ago. What the hell are you doing? You sitting there on the couch?
A lot of things happen to Susan that don't happen to other people.
Push me, huh? You think you can push me and get away with it? Yeah! I don't think so. Let's not.
Susan did have a very hard childhood coming up. Her father killed himself when she was very small. She was molested by her stepfather.
Susan could not handle rejection from a male. This is not uncommon among female sex abuse victims as adults that were abused by their fathers. They cannot stand the rejection of a man. It tears them apart.
On the day the boys disappear, Susan suffers the rejection that she dreads.
She was hoping to marry Tom Finley. Tom Finley wrote her a letter and told her that he didn't want kids. And so that was a problem for Susan, because she really wanted to marry Tom Finley.
The letter is the catalyst for Susan's cold-hearted decision.
Susan cared about herself. She was very narcissistic, with a little bit of sociopathy mixed in there, and her need for the attention of all the men that she wanted. It made for a very, very dangerous cocktail for those 2 little boys.
Shattered by her abandonment, Susan straps her boys in the car and drives to a nearby lake.
She decided they were in the way and they were causing her pain. And so she merely was getting rid of the source of the pain.
Susan stopped at the top of that ramp, which is a pretty good fall down to the lake. She opened the door and hopped out. She took her car out of gear and let the car go.
She said that when the guy took her kids, that they were screaming, "Mommy, Mommy." I bet they were. In a dark car that's now rolled down into the lake, and they're floating, and they're screaming for their mother.
Who knows how long it took the children to die? How long did they float out there before the car turned upside down and dropped into the water?
In the car, there would have been panic. They were restrained in their car seats, so they could only reach up just far enough to keep their nose above water. In all likelihood, they would have experienced panic, terror, as they could no longer get a breath.
Michael and Alex are found 9 days later, still strapped into their car seats.
When the diver found that the car's upside down, you know, it's murky because it's been filled with water, and the lake water was dark. But he saw a small hand kind of pressed against the glass. A lot of guys I'd worked with for years, grown men who had worked hard on this case, that had struggled to try to bring those boys back home, and they were just openly weeping.
In July 1995, Susan Smith is found guilty of 2 counts of murder.
Susan's unusual in that the murder of her sons was premeditated, very cold-hearted, very cold-blooded. It had nothing to do with losing her temper. It all had to do with making her life temporarily better. And in that regard, she's a very unusual mother. Thank God.
Susan is sentenced to 30 years in prison. David Smith still lives every day with what she did.
There's no answer to give somebody on how to deal, especially with the loss of a child. You have to find it inside yourself. I forgave Susan for what she did a long time ago, because to me it was, keeping that in was letting her win, and I had to let that go to move on. I don't ultimately think that death would have been the best punishment, because this way now she has to live with, she has to wake up with every day what she did to Michael and Alex.
These deadly women defeated their strongest instinct. Wanita Hoyt lived half her life with the most awful secrets. Rejected by her lover, Susan Smith responded with a terrible sacrifice. And Andrea Yates was so deluded, she drowned her 5 children to save their souls. Most women would die to save their children. But for these mothers, the drive to protect was defeated by an urge to kill. What kind of parent will ask their child to kill?
Children cannot say no to a parent that wants them to kill.
Mother and son are partners in crime.
Vicious, angry, controlling. They compared her to Charles Manson.
In the Wild West, the family business is murder.
Kate was always given credit for slitting the throats from ear to ear.
And a terrifying mother has a deadly request.
You did whatever Mom said, including kill.
For these deadly women, murder is a family affair. It runs in the bloodlines. On a quiet April day in 2001, Greg Hyman visits his sick father.
Dad! Dad, where are you?
Something is very wrong. The house has been emptied. His grandmother, suffering from Alzheimer's, has been abandoned, slowly starving.
She had survived by eating newspapers, the only thing she could reach. What happened?
Greg's father has vanished.
There was brain matter on the walls, on the ceiling.
It was a crime of great brutality and ignorance.
The city of Everett, Washington State. Barbara Opel is a 38-year-old single mom, struggling with family life.
Barbara Opel had 3 children. Heather Opel, Derek Opel, and Tiffany Goudot, a child from another relationship.
Enough already!
Barbara Opel and her children had lived virtually everywhere for short periods of time. Notices of eviction were as common as junk mail.
Author Burl Barer says Barbara Opel is notorious in the local community.
She was more than well known for screaming at her children. She was almost famous for it.
Enough! Or kill up here! You just sit down and show! You get down there!
Known in many neighborhoods as a loud, obnoxious, screaming, domineering woman. She had a very dominant personality and was also highly manipulative.
Her eldest child is 13-year-old Heather. She does what she can to avoid her mother's wrath.
I've got an extra big soda. It would be nice to say Heather was under her mother's spell, but her mother was a bully. She was under her thumb. She was abused.
You need to build up those muscles. How was training?
When children grow up in a household with one parent, and that parent is constantly yelling at them and abusing them emotionally and physically, it's pretty tough for that kid to not go along with whatever Mom wants them to do.
I said, will you stop with the ball?
They do it to keep peace in the family and to not get hit.
It was lovely, wasn't it, Mama? Enjoyed it outside?
The Opel family's luck changes.
Hi, Barbara. Hi, Heather.
When Barbara meets 64-year-old retiree Jerry Hyman.
Is this for Mama's lunch? Yeah.
He actually felt bad about her living conditions and asked her if she'd like to move in with her children into his basement and care for his elderly mother, who was 89 and wheelchair bound.
It smells nice. You like that soup?
Jerry Hyman has cancer. but his mother is his top priority.
He didn't have that long to live. He wanted to take good care of her. It wasn't quantity of life, it was quality of life. He was willing to sacrifice his own personal well-being to take care of his mother.
Look, if you need to use the car, by all means, if you need to, okay?
Yeah, well, I need to go to some grocery shopping.
Oh, wow. Do you need some money? I tell you what.
Jerry Hyman was generous to Barbara and her family.
Go right ahead, okay? Get what you have to get, okay?
He provided money, gifts to them for the holidays.
I gotta go. I'll be back about 6:30, okay? Bye, Mama.
Barbara Opel has only one person's well-being in mind. Her own.
She discovered he had about $40,000 in the bank, and somewhere along the lines of that first year, began to devise a plan to murder him.
But she won't do the killing. She wants a gang of children to do it for her. The leader will be her daughter Heather's boyfriend, 17-year-old Jeff Grote.
Jeff Grote was a rather athletic speed skater who lived in the area, and he was selected by Heather, 13, as kind of a cutie.
Barbara encouraged that relationship because she wanted Jeff to be the ringleader of the group of young murderers who were ultimately going to kill Jerry Hyman.
And she decided that one of the ways to do this, to get him on her side, was to have her daughter sleep with him.
After using her own daughter as sexual bait, Barbara puts her plan in motion.
When they came out of the bedroom, Heather's mother sat him down for a heart-to-heart talk. It wasn't about safe sex, it was murder. She wanted to enlist Jeff Grote in the plan to kill Jerry Hyman.
Heather, is that you?
There's another gang member Barbara has in mind. Her daughter, Heather.
Whoa! Yeah. Right color and everything. There you go.
Barbara promised Heather both money and a dirt bike. We know that in her diary, Heather had entries that she was going to get a dirt bike out of this killing, and she was excited about that.
For the price of a dirt bike, Heather Opel is prepared to murder a 64-year-old retiree.
Barbara Opel exercised an uncommon degree of dominance over her children. What Mom said went. You did whatever Mom said, including kill.
In a suburban basement, a gang of children are waiting to kill.
All of the young killers in this case came from chaotic family backgrounds. The warmth and love and connection normal families have between parent and child simply was not there for any of the people involved in this murder. So murder for them, pretty easy.
The only adult present is the one pushing them towards murder. Barbara Opel.
You take that. I've had enough.
She wants retiree Jerry Hyman beaten to death.
You ready for it? Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Ready and willing to kill is Barbara's 13-year-old daughter, Heather.
Heather Opel was an excellent student, sports star, well-liked, well-behaved. No one would ever suspect that a girl such as Heather could commit such a horrible crime.
Heather may have failed to develop a strong sense of self because of the overwhelming domination and control of her mother.
This murder would never have happened without Barbara Opel putting these kids up to it.
When Jerry Hyman arrives home on April 13th, 2001, the team of young killers lie in wait.
Mama, why are you sitting in the dark?
Jerry walked in the door. He was immediately attacked, knocked to the floor.
Hit him again!
He cried out, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this to me?"
What?
He never received an answer, and there is no rational answer for it.
They beat this old man to death with souvenir baseball bats, the metal kind that make a ping, and all the boys remember the ping sound when they hit Jerry on the head.
While Jerry Hyman was being murdered, his 89-year-old mother, who was in the late stages of Alzheimer's disease, was sitting in her wheelchair just a few feet away. We believe she witnessed her son being brutally killed in this manner. In fact, Mr. Hyman's blood was found splattered all over the side of her wheelchair.
Go again, go on, kill him!
While the murder of Jerry Hyman was taking place, Barbara Opel was acting as a one-woman cheerleading section from the basement.
Slash him!
I don't think it's an accident that Barbara hid out in the basement and had these children do her murderous deed for her.
Again, make sure you do it right.
She did that on purpose. She is smart enough to know they might get caught, and she could always say, well, I had nothing to do with it, the kids did it. That's how heartless this woman is.
Then, Barbara urges her own daughter up the stairs.
Go get him! What are you waiting for? Get up there!
To kill for Mom.
Come on, baby. Stab it.
Heather Opel, who had just turned 14 years of age, stabbed Jerry Hyman numerous times.
And afterwards, Heather was heard to say by the others, "That was fun, let's do it again."
Go! Come on! Move!
There was a great deal of blood following the bludgeoning and stabbing of Jerry Hyman.
Oh, get this cleaned up. The quicker we get it done, the quicker we get out of here.
Barbara had her daughter clean up the brains and the blood from the floor.
Jerry Hyman's body is dumped in a nearby forest. Barbara has no plans for what to do next.
Basically, she wanted Mr. Hyman dead and wanted his money and wanted other people to do the murder so she could somehow keep her hands clean. That's as far as she went.
A credit card trail soon leads to the arrest of Barbara and her family. The children who obeyed their mother out of blood loyalty are now her undoing.
Barbara denied everything, but once they got to the kids, the game was up.
The children began to give up an incriminating detail here or there, and it was finally the youngest, Tiffany, who broke the case and said Jerry's dead.
Young people talk, they don't take direction well, and they're easily frightened. It was probably the dumbest thing Barbara did in the commission of this murder.
On trial for murder, she tries to blame the crime on her daughter. But the jury finds Barbara Opel guilty and gives her life in jail.
Not only did Barbara lack empathy for her victim, rather helpless old man, she lacked empathy for her daughter and was willing to throw her under the prison bus so that she could escape.
Heather Opel pleads guilty to murder.
It was a difficult trial, difficult moment, to view a distressingly innocent girl who looked every bit of 12 and 13 years old was convicted as an adult murderer and sent off to an adult prison for 22 years.
With mother and daughter in separate prisons, the ties of blood are still powerful.
To this day, Heather does not see her mother as being evil. The dominance over Heather by her mother is absolutely incredible. Heather defended her mother to the very end. It wasn't that Barbara Opel could do no wrong in Heather's eyes. It's just that Barbara Opel could do all the wrong she wanted, and it was okay.
While some children are forced to murder by their parents, others are ready and willing to kill for the family. On the prairies of Kansas in the 1870s, passing travelers stop to see a Wild West medicine show.
So I can see, looking in your eyes, that you're wondering how it is I can cure the
The
blind.
frontier men are mesmerized
So as you can see here, I have my charts.
by a beautiful young woman who offers spiritual cures
Astrology
for
charts.
earthly ills.
Most important of all, my Ouija board.
Kate Bender was a very pretty woman. It's been said that she had lips that would set any man dreaming.
This root.
She was around 5'6" and a very slender woman and very well endowed.
To cure a young boy of his blindness. Yes, it's true.
She had quite a bit of class. She wasn't like most of the women here in the prairie area.
Miss Bender? Do you have anything that would cure a lovesick bachelor?
A lovesick bachelor, of course.
She was very outspoken and quite the talker. She did seances.
I concocted my secret love potion, and it just requires one drop.
Maybe she would laugh and flirt and this kind of thing. She was a lure.
And the next time you see the woman you desire,
Kate Bender is a lure
oh, wait for Grace.
for a deadly family.
The Benders might be America's first serial killer family.
Come on, eat up.
The Benders live out on the frontier trail. Ma and Pa, brother John, daughter Kate.
Well, anyway, it's been a good week, huh?
Very good.
Not bad. Not bad.
While pioneers head west to seek their fortunes,
And what
the
about
Benders are making their own opportunities. Their simple cottage doubles as a general store and an inn.
They had the store and they had the table where they fed people. And now and then, if somebody stayed overnight, they had a straw mattress that they put in there.
Even if a passing traveler hasn't seen Kate's medicine show, he will soon fall under her spell.
Gorgeous horse.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, where are you heading?
I was going to.
But Kate's eyes are only for his money.
Well, Kate was very talkative, very provocative, and she would engage all of the travelers in conversations after they analyzed whether they were worthwhile robbing or not.
Kansas historian Wayne Hallowell says frontier travelers were enticing prey.
People came with large sums of money, but $2,000 was a large sum of money in those days, to buy either a claim or to buy cattle and chickens or whatever to homestead their claims.
I bet you're hungry.
If Kate decides the man looks wealthy enough, he'll be invited in for a meal.
Smells good.
Inside the Bender Inn, there's a special feature.
And they had a canvas wagon top that they hung across the room to divide the public area from their living quarters.
That wagon sheet is the key to a gruesome plan.
So it's a shame you missed my spiritual talk.
She'd put them in front of a chair that was pushed up against a canvas, and I can actually visualize her coming out, you know, very sexy.
Kate Bender's smile is a final distraction. As her brother looms behind the sheet.
The visitors who visited the inn were killed by having a blow in the back of the head.
Yeah, well, maybe you should.
And then Kate would slit their throats.
I don't think anyone was really safe when Katie was around. If Katie wanted something from them, she was going to get it. No one stood in her way.
Out in the American Wild West, travelers are disappearing. After spending a night with Kate Bender and her deadly family.
The general lawlessness of the frontier made it very possible for the Benders to commit these crimes and get away with it.
The Bender family lived together and killed together.
The dynamics of a crime family are interesting in that being a member of a group committing a crime makes it easier to commit that crime.
Okay, how are we going then?
They're all in it together.
As settlers travel west to America's new frontier, the Bender family are lying in wait.
Check them all. Yeah, I checked them out.
Their motive for killing people was money. They were careful to kill people who were not from close around, so they would not go missing.
Author Fern Morrow Wood says the Benders' targets are wealthy outsiders.
They would stop halfway between Fort Scott and Independence and spend the night. And if they appeared to have money, they didn't ever leave.
Ten strangers have gone missing on the trail that passes the Benders Inn. The latest visitor is a return guest, Dr. William York. Like many frontier men, Dr. York is infatuated with Kate Bender.
It's great to see you, Miss Keen.
You know Irene Hall.
I had heard that.
But this will be the doctor's final visit.
High intelligence and great learning. Explains your success in the medical field.
Is there anything about a second marriage in there?
Right? No. 25, huh? That's 25. That's
This time, the Bender family has made a big mistake.
Dr. York was their undoing because he wasn't from far away, as the others were, and he left behind traces.
After Dr. York disappeared, his brother started searching around and following his trail, and the trail ended at the Benders.
His brother was Colonel York, who had been in the Civil War. He was a Civil War colonel who had recently become a Kansas state senator. And Colonel York was a man of action,
When Colonel York rides up searching for his brother, he comes face to face with a dangerous killer.
The idea that a woman would be involved in conning and luring men to their death, to their murder, clearly points to sociopathy.
Howdy, man. I've been looking for my brother. His name is William York.
Katie probably was a chronic liar by the time she was 5 or 6 years old. That's how she learned to con people.
No, sorry. I've not seen this man around here.
You certain about that? He was seen around these
Kate manages to palm the colonel off.
People traveling through, but no, I've never seen him.
But the Benders realize their deadly business is in danger of being shut down.
I don't think Katie thought she was going to get caught. That's exhibited by the fact that they repeated the same crime over and over and over. But eventually, things got too hot for them and they left.
As far as known, they packed up quickly, they took off, they got into their wagon, and they went up to Thayer, which is only 7 miles away. And they bought train tickets, and they split.
Get out of here!
A few weeks later, already suspicious locals notice the inn is abandoned.
So they decided to meet together on the property. The men that went discovered the smell of death, so they started looking. A couple of the men were disgusted and they got up and sat in their buggy looking against the sun and saw a depression in the grass. The depression was where there were some graves. And they told all the farmers to bring plows and shovels, picks. They started digging and they found Dr. York's body first. Almost decapitated, because Kate was always given credit for slitting the throats from ear to ear.
The Benders' land is a secret graveyard.
They found 11 bodies altogether. People were furious. They realized that the Benders were behind the missing people, the murders. There were a number of posses, people who were hunting the Benders. They took off in all these different directions, but they were long gone.
To this day, no one knows what became of Kate and her family.
Come on, eat up.
They've gone down in history as America's first family of serial killers.
There's an excellent chance that when the Benders relocated, wherever it was, they resumed the activity. Possibly on a smaller scale to avoid detection. People that do this kind of thing, especially for profit, rarely stop unless they're stopped by the police.
Los Angeles, 1998.
Too late.
Businessman David Karanson is about to die because he threatened to expose a pair of deadly con artists. They are mother and son, Sante and Kenny Kimes.
Sante Kimes is as dangerous a criminal as I have ever come across.
Sante Kimes crosses the country, leaving a trail of insurance scams, property fraud, and robbery. Sante Kimes is a grifter.
Grifting is a term for the con, tricking someone into taking something from them. And that was what juiced her up, was the lie, the fraud, the stealing.
Right at Sante's side, her own son, Kenny.
It's one thing for a woman to commit a crime, but to involve her children in her crimes is unconscionable, and yet she had no problem doing it.
Kenny is under his mother's control. She has turned him into a criminal and a killer. When banker Saeed Bilal Ahmed inquires into Sante's suspicious bank accounts, his curiosity costs his life.
Anyone who had something Sante wanted, she would go for. If she could see that she wasn't going to be able to con them out of their property, they were in the most danger, and they ended up in the morgue.
New York City, 1998. Sante and her son are chasing the biggest target of their criminal career.
Irene. Oh, hello. Nice to see you again.
Wealthy socialite Irene Silverman.
Come in. Would you like a cup of tea?
Sante and Kenny pretend to be business partners, looking to lease an apartment. Mrs. Silverman is in serious danger. Her new tenants are quietly plotting to take her property and her life.
Sante's a sociopath to the core. And one of the things that we see in criminal sociopaths is that their criminal behaviors cover a broader spectrum. Sociopath will have a record that includes arson, petty theft, fraud, and sometimes later in their careers, their criminal careers, we see murder. And this is what happened to her.
My mother, Sante Kimes, is probably the biggest walking contradiction known to man.
Kent Walker is Sante Kimes' first son.
She was the most fun, loving, greatest person to be around. She had a charisma, a love of life.
I went to a party at the White House, no less.
She had an ability to take any situation, turn into fun, excitement.
I, of course, was the life of the party, as always.
Growing up, Kent remembers a glamorous mother.
I met President Ford, and we had a lovely chat.
She aspires to the high life and models herself on Elizabeth Taylor.
To say I told them my husband was the ambassador of Lithuania.
But Sante Kimes has another side.
She was one of the most frightening people you ever want to meet. In terms of evil, I have a couple friends who were pretty high-powered attorneys, very well-renowned, who knows her, and they compared her to Charles Manson.
This is not champagne. What do you think you're doing? Serving champagne. I told you to serve it during my speech. Does it look like I'm doing a speech?
My mother would turn in an instant.
Get out of my sight. Get out of my sight.
She can, at a drop of a hat, become vicious, angry, controlling, and sometimes violent.
Do you think Elizabeth Taylor had to put up with this?
Her whole life was basically a lie. There would be a little germ of truth. That first germ or seed, but then it would just blossom to this tremendous untruth.
Few are safe from Sante's schemes and cons. Her housekeepers are threatened and locked up without pay. She keeps them as slaves.
The fact that Sante enslaved women speaks to her sociopathy. She was a user and abuser of people to the core.
In 1985, Sante is arrested for slavery.
In fact, it was the only case last century where someone was convicted of slavery.
By now, Kent Walker has moved out, but his younger brother Kenny is in a dangerous position.
The biggest disaster in Kenny's life was when Mom went to jail in the 80s for the meds trial. At the time, Kenny was at about the worst age you can be for something like that to happen. It kind of gave Kenny a mindset that made him the perfect piece of clay to mold for my mother to use.
As Kenny grows up, his mother grooms him to join the family business.
The chances of Kenny not falling into a life of crime with his mother were slim to none. The greatest influence on his life was the person that was supposed to love him the most, his mother, who was a criminal to the core.
On a Manhattan sidewalk, two killers make their escape. This couple are mother and son. With Sante and Kenny Kimes, blood ties have deadly repercussions.
The familial bond, especially parent to child, can be unbreakable, making it almost impossible emotionally for a child to stand up to a parent who wants them to kill.
1 week earlier, wealthy socialite Irene Silverman holds court.
Yep, I can still do all these movements even to this day.
Really?
Oh, yes. Yes, I'll show you.
The ex-ballet dancer is owner of her own $7 million apartment block.
That's the swan one.
Her newest tenants are Sante and Kenny Kimes. Deadly con artists plotting Mrs. Silverman's downfall.
Sante was dangerous to anyone that had something that she wanted, and if she sensed that that person could be manipulated, she would go for it.
The pair forge property deeds, aiming to take control of Irene Silverman's apartment block.
What are we gonna do?
4th of July, this weekend.
So
Everyone's going away on vacation.
First, Mrs. Silverman has to disappear.
Yes? What's the matter? Please, come in.
The blood ties of mother and son make these two criminals a deadly team.
Well, you're evicted. I'm leaving.
No, we're not. No, we're not. We're not evicted. You're staying right here.
What are you doing, you crazy bitch?
Like he has done before, Kenny will kill on his mother's command. A stun gun immobilizes Irene.
Get the rope.
I think the sick psychodynamic between Sante and Kenny probably increased the intensity of their crimes, and they fed off each other, and clearly Mom was the leader.
She was able to take basic, core, good values that every mother should have for their child and twist it to justify any action she did.
Science doesn't know enough about a sociopathy gene to say that he inherited this from his mother. It also could be that he learned bad behavior from her. Little boys love their mothers. They want to please them. And that is what he did as a big boy.
In broad daylight, Sante and Kenny escape. Irene Silverman's body is never found.
I have no doubt that Sante Kimes thought she would never be apprehended. And when that occurred, she never thought she would be convicted.
One day later, the FBI arrest the Kimes on an unrelated fraud charge. In their car are all the tools of the deadly con artists. Guns, masks, rope, forged property deeds, and $30,000 in cash.
Had she not been stopped, she would have been grifting and murdering until the day she died.
In 2000, mother and son face an extraordinary trial. They're convicted on no less than 60 criminal counts. From forgery and burglary to murder. Kenny Kimes is sentenced to 120 years in prison. Sante Kimes, 125 years.
I right then had to confront myself with the fact that I then knew that my mother and my brother were murdered. And it was, in a way, a relief because I knew it was over. In a way, it was scary. I was frightened because I knew what was going to be coming. I was very saddened because I know I'd lost my mother and my brother. Very emotional moment.
Blood ties can be a powerful force for evil. When her mother asked her to kill, Heather Opel said yes. Kate Bender lured human prey for her killer family. And Sante Kimes twisted a son's love to her own murderous ends. For these deadly women, the family that stayed together, killed together. Murder ran in their bloodlines. When a woman's own desires trump the needs of children, a tale of horror can unfold. A mother of two wants another child, at any cost.
One of the worst, if not the worst, crimes I've ever seen.
A grandmother's devotion masks her sadistic nature.
His existence would be horrendous.
And a brutal act of revenge devastates a family.
She knew it would hurt their father to his very core.
These deadly women prey on the young and vulnerable. They kill without pity. Beaverton, Oregon, 2007. A young couple suffers a heartbreaking tragedy.
It'll be all right.
The loss of their unborn child. Karina Roberts already has 2 children from previous relationships, but the 26-year-old wants a child with her current man.
Karina's relationship with her boyfriend had been going on for about 5 years at that time. She had 2 children with different people, a daughter who was 10 and a son who was 6.
Her boyfriend didn't have any children, and they had talked about wanting to have children.
She fears without a baby, she may lose her relationship. Her boyfriend is a loving man to her children. But Karina knows he wants a baby of his own.
She wanted a baby, and I think she wanted it to bond with the man she was living with.
In November 2008, Karina is blessed with not 1 tiny miracle, but 2.
Twins. You're joking.
And from that time on, all throughout the next 6 months, she had started gathering baby items such as clothing, outfits.
An excited Karina takes her news to the streets.
What are you up to?
I'm pregnant.
That's wonderful.
Karina's self-esteem was pretty much completely tied to being a mother, specifically to being pregnant.
In the nearby city of Portland, the joy of a new baby is filling Heather Snively's life too. She and her fiancé have just moved to the area to start a new life.
Heather Snively was a happy 21-year-old expectant mother.
Oh. I love it.
Put it on.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay.
She was very excited to be a mom. By all accounts, she was putting a lot of energy and focus into preparing for this birth, setting up the baby's room, just getting everything ready.
Oh. Not long now, darling.
Excited.
Everything was about the baby at that point.
Both Heather and Karina turn to the internet for their baby shopping.
We know that that's how she ended up connecting with Karina.
The 2 of them soon get chatting.
They shared some of the same interests. She and Karina became pretty good friends.
She's invited me to go shopping with her on Friday.
The expectant moms have so much in common, they click in the real world too.
I can't believe how cheap some of that stuff was. It was so good, so.
They met up several times to exchange items.
Good.
But one of these 2 moms has a secret that no one could ever imagine.
She had her tubes tied shortly after the birth of her second child.
Karina couldn't get pregnant, so she did everything she could to convince her boyfriend that she was, in fact, capable of having a child.
She has faked a miscarriage. And now a pregnancy.
Karina had made up the story about being pregnant in 2007 and then again in 2008. Karina and her boyfriend had a pretty stressed and rocky relationship. She used the lie of pregnancy to hold that relationship together because it was fulfilling something in her relationship that she was attempting to keep together.
And her deception works.
Karina was a very good actress when it came to playing the part of a pregnant woman. And she had her boyfriend fooled.
Until Karina's due date closes in. Karina needs twins, and she needs them now.
It's basically time for her to produce.
Beaverton, Oregon, 2008. 27-year-old mother of two, Karina Roberts, tells the world she is expecting twins. News her live-in boyfriend has been yearning for. Online, Karina bonds with pregnant women,
Oh! This woman says she knows where to get bargains.
including 21-year-old Heather Snively.
Karina met with Heather on several occasions. They went out and looked for baby items.
June 5th, 2009, Karina arranges another shopping trip with Heather.
I'm going shopping today with that woman I met online.
I'll see you tonight.
Heather's fiance, Chris, gave Heather a hug and a kiss goodbye, told her he loved her and he was excited to see her after work. And then as he was leaving, he turned around, came back and gave her another hug and kiss and just said he just felt like he needed to be close to her.
Karina invites Heather back to her home.
His little piggy.
She was able to gain enough confidence and get her to come inside the home.
Do you mind if I use the bathroom? No. Okay. No, it's first on left.
Heather has no idea what is in store. Karina's phantom pregnancy is about to get real.
While they were both inside the residence alone, Karina was able to get a collapsible ass baton and had a metal tip on the end of it. She was able to somehow attack Heather with that baton by striking her in the head.
There were multiple blows to Heather's head from the baton.
She was struck 15 to 30 times, mostly in the back of the head.
Heather tries to save her life and her unborn baby.
She had some defensive wounds. She had cuts to her right breast and abdomen. She had bite marks on her right arm.
But the heavily pregnant woman is no match for Karina.
Heather died trying to save her unborn baby, and the evidence of that is all over Karina's house.
Now she does the unthinkable.
Karina got a razor blade and used the razor blade to cut Heather from hip to hip across her lower abdomen.
Heather's baby is 10 weeks premature.
The baby was removed from Heather's body but never took a breath.
Karina wanted a live baby, but is left with 2 dead bodies.
People that are hell-bent on committing a murder for a specific reason disregard all the reality and facts that get in their way of committing that murder. And that's what Karina did.
Karina hides Heather's body under the house and fakes a stillbirth. She calls her boyfriend.
She was crying hysterically, sounded very upset, and sounded like she was in pain.
I need you.
Karina's boyfriend came home. He found her laying in the bathtub, holding what he believed to be his newborn child. He realized the baby wasn't breathing. Karina's boyfriend called 911.
My girlfriend's just had twins. One of them's born. It's not breathing.
Paramedics arrived and got her to the hospital within 10 minutes. It was very quick.
But there is a dreadful hole in Karina's story. She is supposed to be expecting twins.
They put a heartbeat monitor on Karina, and they found no heartbeat of a second baby. They then conducted an examination, and the doctor told Karina that she had not given birth. And Karina argued with the doctor, saying that that's not true and that she had given birth at home. The doctor was suspicious of Karina's behavior at the hospital. She was not acting as a normal mother would.
Suspicious medical staff alert the police. A frantic search begins for the real mother, starting at Karina's house.
Police found bloody footprints and smears. They found a lot of blood in the bathroom, and then eventually a large pool of blood leading into the crawl space.
And when they opened the crawl space, they found Heather Snively inside.
It's not unusual for someone planning a murder to not pay attention to what happens after the murder. And that's usually where they get caught.
The deception is over. Karina is guilty of murder, but only 1 count.
There was nothing to indicate that the child had been alive or had taken a breath.
As a result of this murder, there was a change in legislation which made it aggravated murder to kill a pregnant woman. And the sentence for that is life in prison with no chance of parole.
In 2010, Karina Roberts is sentenced to life, never to be released.
People's first thought is, well, she must be crazy. But when you're around Karina, she seems completely normal until you put her into the context of what she did to Heather, and then she becomes a monster.
When children are not cherished.
He had no childhood.
Or protected.
Extreme physical, mental, and nutritional neglect.
Young lives are shattered.
This is as bad as it gets.
Toronto, Canada, 1998. Being a young mom is always going to be difficult when you've got 4 children and you're only 24, it can push you over the edge.
Shut up! Shut up, baby! You're the crappiest baby ever!
It's very difficult to prove that a parent is unfit and take their child or children away from them. But that's what happened.
Someone needs to rescue the children. The question is, who?
If a next of kin are capable of looking after the child, then it's best to keep the child with a family member.
The children's maternal grandmother, Elva Bottineau, steps up. She seems to have the right qualifications, including an online course in child psychology. In fact, she is already mother to a house full of children, big and small.
Some of Elva's adult children had come home, and they would bring with them their boyfriend or girlfriend, and sometimes friends.
Husband Norman Kidman leaves the running of the house to Elva.
Norman was the type of fellow that would come home after work and sit in his lazy boy chair and watch TV for the rest of the evening. Basically, he did nothing with regard to the children.
A home of modest earnings, small but comfortable.
They had all the amenities that any day of today would have. They had internet service, computers. Everything just appeared to be normal.
Neighbors and friends admire Elva's dedication to her grandchildren.
Hi, how are the grandchildren? Oh, they're doing fine, thank you. I don't know how you do it. Love gets you through.
The way that Elva presented herself outside the home was a very likable person. She was able to give this perception that she was a caring grandmother.
For the next 4 years, the 4 children live with Elva.
Elva treated the oldest and youngest child, 11 and 4 years old, very well.
The very youngest, he was treated like the little prince in the house. He was well-dressed, well-kept.
But Elva doesn't dote over all the children. 5-year-old Jeffrey and his 6-year-old sister are shunned.
Shut up in there!
There was no heat coming into the room. The window was covered with paper, so you couldn't see outside the window.
They had no access to a bathroom. They lived in their own excrement.
To say they were treated horribly would be a compliment.
Only the little girl is allowed out of her dank room to go to school. But there is no escape from the dark for Jeffrey.
Jeffrey never saw any daylight from the time that he was 18 months of age. And then from that point on, it was just hell.
In this case, with his environment being so filthy, the fact that he was trapped in a room with feces and urine, that his skin was caked with dirt, this meant that the caretaker, upon which this child relies, was not caring for this child in any way.
The years of confinement take their toll on his little body.
This child's growth would be stunted in every way possible. They develop soft bones. Their bones cannot support their muscles. Their bones will fracture easily. Without sunlight, the child doesn't have the psychological and neurological brain development that is necessary.
It's not uncommon for an abusive parent to single out one, in this case 2, children out of a group of children for abuse and neglect. And they do it right in front of the other children and sometimes other people.
The rest of the household turn a blind eye to the children's plight.
The people in the house had entered into some sort of unspoken agreement to not acknowledge what was happening in front of them.
It's fine.
Instead of liberation from an abusive mom, the children are now prisoners.
They put these 4 defenseless children right in Elva's claws.
In the suburbs of Toronto in 2002.
I don't know how you do it. Love gets you through.
Elva Bottineau is admired for rearing her 4 grandchildren. Looks can be deceiving, but no one realizes the depth of Elva's deceit.
Shut up, you stinking pigs!
In her care, 5-year-old Jeffrey and his 6-year-old sister endure years of horror.
They lived an appalling life. They were treated as subhuman even by their siblings.
Everything Elva displays to the outside world is a fraud, including her precious child psychology certificates.
Elva, who's always taking various low-life internet courses to enhance her presentation as a good parent.
And grandparenthood is proving quite lucrative, collecting the child support payments.
Her sole purpose, obtaining legal custody of those children, was to subsidize them for income.
She was motivated by money. Those kids were her meal ticket.
So Jane's home in Toronto?
About 6 months, maybe a year.
So are you serious about it?
The home is full of adults, but no one stands up for the children, even when they're starving.
They would eat while sitting on the mat.
Help yourselves.
They would get the scraps from the adults' plates.
Fed like animals, called animals.
They were continuously called pigs. Elva told the other children in the house to refer to them as the pigs.
It's also not uncommon for an abusive or neglectful parent to elicit the participation of siblings of the abused.
Don't go slow.
They were forced to march around the room, the kitchen, in a circle around the kitchen table as a form of exercise.
Abusing a child gives an abusive parent an outlet for what they really feel a need to do, which is be mean and wield power and to dominate a weaker, lesser creature.
Get back to your spot!
It makes them feel good.
Jeffrey's body can't cope with the ongoing abuse and deprivation. Finally, one adult opens his eyes and his mouth.
A young man that was staying in the house commented to Elva that Jeffrey looked very bad.
This kid over here doesn't look too well.
Wasn't doing well, and she should do something about it.
Shouldn't you take him to the hospital or something?
No,
She told him not to meddle.
She's not refusing because she doesn't see that he needs it. She's refusing because she's starting to get afraid she's going to get caught.
If she had gotten help or let anyone help Jeffrey, what she was doing would have been exposed and she would have lost it.
On November 30th, 2002, after 4 years of abuse, Jeffrey's misery ends.
He crawled up the stairs slowly because he could barely walk. Went into his room, lay down, and waited. And finally stopped breathing. He died of sepsis.
He weighed more when he was 18 months of age than he did at the time of his death.
Finally, Elva calls 911. The paramedics arrive to find a cold body.
Jeffrey's eyes were open, his lips were blue. He was lifeless.
Elva's not talking, but a homicide investigation reveals everything they need to know.
What ended up being uncovered within the files were criminal records. And these criminal records went back to 1970.
Elva is a serial child abuser. Herself a teen mom, Elva's first victim is her baby daughter.
Why can't you just stop crying?
Her first daughter died mysteriously of pneumonia when she was only 5 months old. Post-mortem investigation revealed bruises that were classic signs of child abuse. Elva pleaded guilty.
2 more of Elva's children are also abused in 1978. This time by her husband, Norman Kidman.
One of the creepiest things of the story is that the 2 children that Norman abused had also been kept in cages, treated like dogs, tied with dog chains, etc.
I mean, this was all typical of exactly what Jeffrey had gone through.
In April 2006, Elva Bottineau and Norman Kidman are convicted of second-degree murder and forcible confinement. Both are sentenced to life in prison. The horror of Jeffrey's life has a far-reaching effect. The Ontario Child and Family Services Act is changed to ensure background checks are done on all caregivers. Something that could have saved Jeffrey.
I feel haunted by Jeffrey's life because the tools to prevent those kids from going into the clutches of that couple were within the files of the agency.
Little Jeffrey's death does save one life, his sister's.
She was in barely better condition than Jeffrey. She had barely escaped with her life.
No little child was really safe in Elva's care as long as one of them would be available for her to abuse. When that child was gone, she would have turned to another.
Is you talk that too?
A divorce doesn't always solve a couple's problems.
She clearly became more and more bitter.
Anger and resentment can linger.
Rea was also incredibly jealous.
And sometimes the consequences are unimaginable.
There are no words to describe how horrible this crime is.
In the quiet rural village of Streatham, England, in 2007. 40 51-year-old divorcee, Rea Kumari Baker, struggles to cope with being a single mom.
Reca's divorce from her husband was pretty traumatic, and there was a lot of bitterness on the part of Rea.
Caring for her daughters, 16-year-old Davina and 13-year-old Jasmine, seems more of a burden than a blessing.
She gave the impression that she was not a mother who enjoyed being a parent.
Rea was never going to win any awards for being Mother of the Year, but she was okay until the divorce.
Hello. Hi.
On the surface, Rea has moved on. She has a new boyfriend, a wealthy businessman.
It must have seemed at the beginning like a dream relationship for Rea because this guy had enough money that he was able to contribute towards her mortgage and the upkeep of her house.
But it is still not a happy home. Eldest daughter, Davina, and mom are drifting apart.
This reeks of alcohol and cigarettes. We care.
There were tensions. Her and Davina were certainly at loggerheads on occasions.
Davina was a typical 16-year-old schoolgirl. Yeah, she had arguments with her mother. She was quite rebellious.
But Rea is not a mom to be toyed with.
Davina's unhappiness at home with Rea all came to a head when mother and daughter had a furious row. And Rea decided to chuck her out of the house.
You can go and live with him.
And she ended up moving back in with her father.
She's going. Now.
It must have been very difficult for them as sisters because they wanted to support themselves and each other.
Meanwhile, Dad's found a new love. He and his girlfriend welcomed Davina with open arms.
David's relationship with Davina was clearly very close.
The stable home life is just what Davina needs. The rebellious teen settles down.
Davina, by all accounts, was much happier once she moved in with her father, David.
Everyone is happy except Rea.
Hello?
Is Davina there?
Rea, calm down.
Rea had a very complicated relationship with her two daughters. She loved them, but it turned into a love-hate relationship. She wouldn't let them go, but she really didn't want them around.
Is your tart there too?
Nor does Rea want her daughter around her ex's new woman.
That's ridiculous. If Davina lives here, of course they're going to spend time together.
Reca's reaction to her ex-husband's new love caused even more friction with her ex-husband because he couldn't understand why Rea felt such animosity towards this woman who'd come along long after their divorce.
That's all right.
The facts are David had moved on in his life. He had a partner, and he had a good relationship with his daughters.
Reca's anger is taking its toll on her relationship, too.
To us?
Rea, this isn't going to work.
He decided he wanted to end the relationship with Rea.
But I love you. If you go, I've got nothing.
Don't be ridiculous.
The relationship had run its course. It had been good, but he was moving on in life.
The despair of a second lost love is more than Rea can handle.
She really found herself in the gutter emotionally.
Some people fare well after a divorce, some don't. Rea fell into the second category. Rea started unraveling.
All these things were combining to create this perfect storm, which in the end erupted in the most horrific manner.
In sleepy Streatham, England,
I don't want her round Davina.
single mother, 41-year-old Rea Kumari Baker is caught in an emotional storm. The angst of a divorce,
She's going. Now.
the challenges of raising 2 teenage daughters, and then her hope of happiness walks out the door when her boyfriend dumps her.
Rea was devastated by the end of her relationship and started sending obsessive texts, lots and lots of them, begging him to come back to her. She was struggling.
The divorce from her husband changed the status of her life, financially, emotionally, and it set her on a path of destruction.
June 12, 2007. Rea sets in motion a meticulous plan. She picks up her eldest daughter from her exes and takes both girls shopping. Mom's in a generous mood. The girls can buy what they want.
It must have surprised them enormously. This was something completely out of character.
They were both happy, they were both laughing, they were both okay.
Rea's generosity is carefully calculated. She keeps Davina out so late, it's impractical for her to go home to Dad. She spends the night with Mom.
And this was a very important part of that plan because she needed to guarantee that both her daughters stayed at her house that night.
You look beautiful in your tops today, Jazzy.
Night. Love you.
Love you too.
The girls had had a great time. They went to bed happily.
Now, Rea will get her revenge. But it won't be taken out on her exes. It will be closer to home.
She goes back upstairs and she enters Davina's room.
And immediately started a frenzied attack.
Davina had defensive wounds.
But she continued stabbing her daughter over and over again, and in the end, there were 39 stab wounds. Armed with these same 2 knives, she then entered the bedroom of her younger daughter. And she began another frenzied attack. Jasmine, unlike her older sister, didn't even have time to fight back, and she received 29 stab wounds.
There are no words to describe how horrible this crime is. That A mother who was not mentally ill would stab to death children she had raised for well over a decade.
Still covered in her daughter's blood, Rea writes a note explaining the inexplicable.
Rea says she murdered the two girls so that they would never be hurt by anyone.
She seemed to be blaming the men in her life for the reason why she killed her daughters.
And she talks about how she couldn't allow her daughters to be hurt as she had been hurt.
Rea turns herself in to the police, but pleads temporary insanity. At trial, she offers no evidence of mental illness.
There is no evidence in anything that Rea has ever done which would have indicated that she could have reacted so violently. There's nothing.
The jury agrees. In 2007, Rea Kumari Baker is found guilty of double murder.
The jury only took 35 minutes to find Rea guilty of the murder of both her daughters. She received a double mandatory life sentence. That means a minimum of 33 years in prison, one of the longest sentences ever given to a woman in Britain.
Rea is eligible for parole in 2040. Everyone searches for some explanation, but the only conclusion is pure hate.
The judge didn't believe she was mentally ill when she killed her daughters, stabbing them each 30 times. This was a revenge murder, but she didn't kill the target of her anger. She killed what he loved. Rea's need to hurt trumped her need to love her daughters and take care of them. It's that simple.
These deadly women were cowards. They targeted the helpless. Karina Roberts stole the lives of a mother and baby to keep her man. Elva Bottineau tortured her grandchildren for welfare money. And Rea Kumari Baker murdered her teenage daughters for the ultimate revenge. These deadly women had no nurturing spirit. They killed without pity. A mother's role is to love, protect, and nurture. But some moms don't know how. A Missouri woman uses her children for money and freedom.
She was just cold. I mean, Ellen was just cold towards the kids.
A Texas mom's devotion becomes delusional.
It was just one of the most horrific scenes he'd ever seen.
And a young Australian makes a water sacrifice.
It was our first generation why murder, why not?
These deadly women target the most trusting and vulnerable. They are evil guardians. '86, St. Louis, Missouri. 26-year-old Ellen Boehm is tired of the constraints of family life. A young bride to a much older Vietnam veteran. Within 5 years of marrying, Ellen is the mother of 2, with a 3rd baby on the way.
The kids need you here.
You go out. It's my turn.
To the wrestling.
I don't know if Ellen really wanted to be a mom that quick, but she was. So as like most new moms, she was learning on the fly.
That's Deanne. I'm off.
Ellen's not a typical stay-at-home mom. She's a die-hard wrestling fan. A passion shared with friend Deanne Bond. She remembers those first nights at the wrestling ring where they meet.
Ellen sat behind my husband and I at the professional wrestling matches in St. Louis, so I got acquainted with her that way, and we both enjoyed professional wrestling.
The 2 women have another thing in common: marriage troubles.
I went through my divorce, and we got to talking, and then her marriage was in trouble.
8 months pregnant with her 3rd child, husband Paul drops a bombshell.
Oh, this baby's taking forever.
I'm gonna be at the hospital before you.
What are you talking about?
He told her that when he was in Vietnam, he was exposed to Agent Orange. And the only way he could be cured was he was going to have to go to Texas for treatment.
Doctor says I need urgent tests.
But it is all a lie. Paul is not sick. He is leaving Ellen for another woman.
Very few men leave a wife who's pregnant, but that's what Ellen's husband did.
July 25th, 1986. Ellen gives birth to baby David, alone.
Ellen was not a demonstrative person. I couldn't say she was real loving, but she was good with the kids. Even when things were tough, I mean, as tough as they could get.
And times are tough. Abandoned by her husband, Ellen is left with mounting bills, despite working in an office during the day and delivering pizzas at night.
It always dumped on Ellen. She would get calls from these collected agencies demanding their money, and she's trying to do the best she can with what she makes.
Hello? Yes, I know. Look, I just need a little more time.
Raising 3 children and drowning in debt doesn't stop Ellen from indulging in her favorite pastime: wrestling.
This weekend is gonna be the best.
You're spending all your money on these matches.
Don't worry, Mom. I am planning for one of them to marry me.
It was strange that she was spending the money on wrestling trips when she might need it for everyday life. But at the same time, I could see how much joy and how much fun she was having. It was carefree for her. She didn't have 3 little ones that were tugging at her.
She figured she deserved a little time off to do something for herself. That was her hobby, wrestling.
In 1988, Ellen is forced to file for bankruptcy.
There was no humanly way possible she could keep up and take care of a new family.
Debt and financial hardship are among the most profound stressors in life.
Mommy, where's dinner? I'm hungry.
So is raising 3 children. Ellen had both.
Soon, Ellen's hobby becomes an obsession. Wrestling is more important than friends and family.
Things deteriorated. Wrestling became just so much of her world. It was an escape from reality. It wasn't healthy.
Rather than walk away from her excessive involvement in expensive weekends away watching wrestlers, Ellen chose to indulge her compulsion.
Ellen wants some me time, and she soon finds a way to get it. 1988, St. Louis, Missouri. 28-year-old, single mother of 3, Ellen Boehm, is bankrupt.
Look, I just need a little more time.
She was up to her neck in debt and trying to figure a way out of it.
Since her divorce, Ellen's children are more of a burden than a joy.
She was just so overwhelmed, and she's still trying to take care of 3 kids.
Ellen doesn't have the patience to deal with her youngest son, 2-year-old David.
They're all fussy. But moms get over it. Ellen just didn't want to deal with it.
Thanksgiving, November 24th, 1988. Ellen settles her 2 older children in bed. But little David is allowed to stay up.
I can only guess what was going through Ellen's head at that time.
She gets a big cushion off of her couch. Lays it across his chest. And he couldn't breathe.
He had to know that was their mother.
Ellen took little David's life literally in her own hands and snuffed it out.
When Ellen thinks David is dead, she calls for help and says she found him unconscious.
They transferred David to Children's Hospital. And when they eventually winds up on life support.
The doctor came in and he told us that there was nothing they could do.
There's no brain activity. There's nothing more we can do.
Doctors seek Ellen's permission to take David off life support.
What would you do? Would you pull a plug?
Oh, God, I can't.
Her friend Deanne is shocked by Ellen's response.
And she turned to the doctor and she said,
Pull it.
I froze for just a minute. It was just as though she had said, I want a Coke.
She never did shed any tears.
Ellen receives a life insurance payout of $5,000.
That was the first taste of any extra money.
Only 8 months after David's death, Ellen goes shopping.
Yes, hello. Do you do life insurance policies for children?
Turned out there was like a total like $94,000 worth of life insurance taken out.
Okay, so that means a payout of how much if she dies?
September 13th, 1989. Ellen's 8-year-old daughter is enjoying a relaxing bedtime bath.
She got into the bathtub and she had her Barbie dolls with her and she was playing.
She felt this funny feeling, and then she tried to get up, and she couldn't, and she screamed, and apparently she was able to throw it out of the tub.
She did take Jenny to the hospital because she was bleeding a little from the mouth.
You assume it's an accident. Things happen with children, unfortunately.
Ellen's daughter survives, and everyone accepts it as an unfortunate accident. Until just 12 days later, Ellen falls into an all-too familiar routine.
Stevie was watching TV, kind of drifting off. She took the pillow from under his head. And held it over his face until he had turned white.
Stephen's passing creates a sense of unease among Ellen's friends. They can't understand her reaction.
There was just no emotion whatsoever. It was just like another day.
For longtime friend Deanne Bond, a third tragedy in the Boehm family is too much. She calls the police.
That time, I just couldn't let this go.
Suspecting foul play, police conduct a thorough investigation. The years of deceit take their toll on Ellen. Realizing police are closing in on 2 murders and 1 attempted murder, she confesses to everything.
She broke down and admitted that she had done it. She explained how she did it. She never did say why she did it.
Ellen could not have the life she wanted with children, or so she thought. So she chose murder.
The thing that gets to me the most is a little girl now knows that her mother killed her 2 brothers. And 2 little boys never got a chance to grow up. That's the hardest part.
In 1993, Ellen pleads guilty to 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of second-degree murder. She receives 2 life sentences with no possibility of parole.
I have always felt that taste of not having to pinch every penny when she got that insurance money for David is what set this whole thing in motion.
Ellen killed her children for money. It was all about the payday.
Nobody really knows what someone is thinking.
There was no reality for her anymore.
Or feeling.
She had something worse than postpartum depression.
Be gone, Jezebel!
And sometimes you don't want to.
She thought their daughter should be with Jesus. Wasn't anybody listening?
2000, Fort Worth, Texas. 32-year-old Dena Schlosser has an enviable life. Husband John, an online computer specialist, makes a 6-figure income and provides a good life for Dena and their young family.
John was making $100,000 a year. They lived in a 3,000 square foot home in an upscale community of Fort Worth.
John's healthy income allows Dena to be a stay-at-home mom to their daughters, aged 5 and 2, a role she relishes.
She was a wonderful mother. And she was more than willing to give up working, to stay at home and take care of her children.
The family's life takes a turn for the worse in 2001, when the dot-com bubble bursts. John loses his computer job and his lucrative salary.
He finds some software consultancy work. He takes unemployment for a while when things dry up after that.
The house was foreclosed upon.
The family downsizes to a modest apartment in the nearby town of Plano. They seek solace in their new community, particularly the church.
They were needing something spiritually, emotionally, so they found something there that really appealed to them.
There are women in this church consumed by her evil spirit. We must repent and pray. Praise the Lord.
The church's pastor seems to have all the answers.
He just amazed everybody. He had a real command of the Bible.
Now, the Jezebel spirit, it's a spirit of witchcraft.
And beyond that, he had tremendous charisma.
Praise the Lord. Ask for forgiveness. You know who you are.
But not everyone is convinced he is spreading the good word.
It just looks like a small, quaint church. Inside, though, it's not small or quaint. It is a church that a lot of former members say was a cult.
John and Dena are soon devotees,
You must repent.
attending church daily to hear the sermons.
Praise the Lord.
It got so bad that the Schlosser children would not eat meals. They would skip their dinner because they were at church that much.
They became incredibly and obsessively devoted to their church.
They need to pray to God for forgiveness.
When Dena's mom comes to visit, she is concerned by the change in her daughter.
Time to get up. But she's sick. We have to go to church.
Dena started acting strangely.
When one of the little girls had a cough,
This will help.
the grandmother brought over cough syrup, but Dena wouldn't give it to her. She said medicines are evil. Prayer was the answer for everything.
Dena's dependency on the church will cause more than a family rift. But few see it coming.
No one knew anything was wrong until after the third child was born.
Plano, Texas. Dena Schlosser's ideal world collapses when the dot-com bubble bursts in 2001, and her husband, John, loses his job. The couple find comfort and guidance in a new church.
Now, we are all sinners. You need to pray for forgiveness.
They were struggling to survive once John lost his high-paying job, but they aggravated all that by going to church 5, 6, 7 times a week.
In 2003, Dena is blessed. She gives birth to her third child, a baby girl, Maggie. In keeping with their religious beliefs, they don't seek medical assistance.
The midwife advised the couple to go to the hospital, but they refused. Medicine is evil. Science is evil.
A difficult labor bears a healthy baby, but a sick mother. Something triggers a psychosis.
Dena became severely mentally ill. In some people, this rare condition happens. We see it now and then after a woman has a baby.
Dena believes all the help she needs is in the Bible.
She was reading the Bible, and the word cut jumped up from the page. And she went and got a knife and cut her wrists. Her husband came home and found her holding the baby, bleeding.
Dena's delusions continue. Day by day, they become more terrifying.
Dena thinks the television is laughing at her. She runs out of the house, petrified, and leaves her children behind.
She was eventually found in an intersection, holding her hands up to the heavens.
The officer approaches. As he tries to get close, she just screams. It was the loudest scream he'd ever heard in his life.
Whoa, no, it's all right. We need some help.
Admitted into a mental health facility, Dena is diagnosed with a severe form of postpartum psychosis.
She had no touch with reality. She thought God was talking to her. She was delusional and hearing voices.
Doctors want her to stay in the hospital, but Dena insists on going home.
She doesn't stay there long. Matter of hours.
Psychotic mothers should not be raising children.
Health officials agree to Dena's release, but schedule visits from welfare officers.
Child Protective Services was in her home every single day for months.
Under the proper care, Dena improves.
Dena was doing so much better. She was returning to her normal self.
Oh, Maggie. You love your sisters, don't you?
She wasn't hallucinating.
And they love you.
But Dena stops taking her medication, and by May 2004, she spins out of control with spiritual delusions.
This is known as religious ideation, ideas about religion and God. And someone psychotic who thinks God is talking to them can be very dangerous.
Praise the Lord. Amen.
Amen.
As the months pass, Dena's behavior is even more bizarre.
After church, Dena told John that she wanted to give the baby to God.
Let's go home.
John told her that she was confused. They apparently went home and then tried to pray about it that night.
The next morning, November 22nd, 2004, John is at work, the older children in school. Dena is alone with baby Maggie.
But she was convinced that God wanted Maggie.
She walked into the kitchen. She went to the knife set and pulled out the largest one that had a 9-inch blade. And she went up to her crib, believing it was time for Maggie to go back to God. She grabbed the knife and stabbed it in little Maggie's shoulder and started cutting.
There were over 50 puncture marks, which indicated that that mother used at least 50 thrusts of the knife, sawing motions to attempt to sever the arm. This would have been a horrible, terrorizing, agonizing death for this infant.
A psychotic woman killing her child to send them to heaven is on a dedicated mission, and nothing is going to stop them.
Having given her daughter as an offering to God, Dena turns the knife on herself.
She cut through her muscle. She said she intended to cut off both of her arms, but she couldn't go on. The pain was too great.
Dena then calls her husband.
Dena, everything okay?
I've hurt Meg. I've cut her arms off.
With news that he can't comprehend.
You did that?
Yeah, I did.
John was in disbelief.
After a series of panicked phone calls, police arrive at the Schlossers' home. Hell on earth.
Dena stood with the knife she used to kill her daughter in her hand. She was covered with blood.
Praise God. Thank you, God. Praise God.
He walked to the bedroom where he saw blood everywhere and a completely silent baby. Just one of the most horrific scenes he'd ever seen.
A scene that will never be forgotten.
Dena never should have been allowed to care for her young daughter from the first moment she said her daughter belonged in heaven.
Dena Schlosser pleads guilty to murder, but is found not guilty by reason of insanity.
She thought what she did was in service of God, so why would she lie about it?
In 2006, Dena is placed in a mental institution. 6 years later, she is released on an outpatient status on the condition that she never contacts her 2 surviving daughters.
Dena Schlosser breaks my heart. The only thing that is worse than the horrible death her daughter suffered is how it all didn't have to happen. The disintegration of Dena Schlosser was horrific. She was not given the proper care.
Dena wielded the knife that killed her daughter, but it wasn't with malice. She was psychotic. She was out of her mind.
There was a good, kind person inside, somewhere.
Becoming a new mom doesn't always mean you're ready.
She wanted to go to the pubs with her mates. That's what she wanted.
Some mothers never grow up.
Gemma was very immature.
Oh my God, when?
2008, Perth, Australia. 19-year-old Gemma Keen is out for the night.
She's a very friendly girl, very outgoing, someone to party with.
Like most girls her age, Gemma is looking for a good time. She finds it in 20-year-old, New Zealand-born Eddie Watiri.
You've got a little band. Oh, he's gorgeous.
It's a whirlwind romance. And the young couple soon moves in together. For Gemma, Eddie is all she needs.
By all accounts, Gemma wanted to be with Eddie full-time.
But a third person soon enters their relationship.
You want a beer?
I'm pregnant.
An unexpected pregnancy.
I'm gonna be a dad. You're gonna be a mom.
In late 2008, Eddie and Gemma are the proud parents of a baby boy,
Mom, let him do
Caden.
It's all right.
He was a bubbly young fella. Never presented too many problems for them.
Gemma's mom is there to help her daughter and give her sound advice.
She could still have a life, but she had to put part of that aside to take care of her son.
What is going on?
But Gemma soon finds being a mom is no party.
Oh, you've done another one? This changed you 15 minutes ago.
She wanted to be outgoing. She wanted to be out, not at home. She wanted to be with her friends, not with her son.
Most young parents are stressed. Raising a baby is not easy.
Nothing exciting.
But balancing home life, social life, and childcare
Oh my God, when?
gets worked out.
Are there still tickets?
Not for Gemma.
To add to her woes, Gemma is no longer Eddie's #1 priority. Caden is.
I'm going out with the girls.
The relationship itself was quite volatile.
Are you serious? What about Caden?
Don't wait up.
She was upset that she wasn't getting 100% of Eddie's attention.
What Gemma wanted now.
Gemma's demanding ways are too much for Eddie. They split up. Gemma and baby Caden move in with her mother. But Eddie is still an involved father and now considers Gemma a friend with benefits.
Gemma and Eddie had an on and off relationship.
Eddie is happy with a casual relationship, but Gemma wants more.
Can we lie like this forever?
She wanted to renew the relationship, but her former partner didn't.
Gemma wanted things between her and Eddie back to the way that it was before Caden was born.
The couple's priorities are worlds apart.
It's my night to go out.
On November 25th, 2010, Gemma is once again going out on the town.
All I do is look after that stupid kid. I never get to have any fun anymore.
She was clearly immature and she was selfish.
I'm over this. Do you hear me?
She was still trying to live out some of her teenage years.
Gemma had a very unrealistic fantasy of parenthood, but it was full of responsibilities that she just did not want to deal with.
The next morning, the atmosphere is frosty. Eddie has had enough of Gemma's party lifestyle.
I'm sorry I was late last night. Give me a kiss.
She'd arrived home back at Eddie's house at 2 o'clock in the morning. This infuriated Eddie, that she was perhaps not living up to her responsibility as a parent.
In the wake of her argument with lost love Eddie, Gemma seeks retail therapy.
During that time, she sent several SMS messages to Eddie, which were not responded to by him.
Eddie is not answering.
It's clear she became increasingly more and more agitated by his non-interest in her messages.
Answer me, boss.
But Gemma won't accept the silent treatment. By the end of the day, Eddie will answer her calls. Perth, Australia. Gemma Keen isn't enjoying her life as a young mom. The 22-year-old is bored caring for her son, 2-year-old Caden, and wants her on-again, off-again relationship with Caden's father, Eddie Watiri, more permanent.
She kept on going out. She kept on trying to get back with Eddie.
On November 25th, 2010, Gemma's life gets a lot worse. An innocent trip to a beachside shopping mall ends in high drama.
It was about 5:45 in the evening when she raised the alarm.
Mum, someone's taking Caden. I don't know where he is.
She was putting some other items into the boot of the car. He was in the pram and somehow he's got out.
Eddie rushes to where Gemma always wants him, by her side.
We were playing in the swings over there, and then I went to the toilet block to get some water, and I came back and he was gone.
Why did you leave him alone?
Doesn't matter. You go to the swings. Go to the swings.
Police launch a full-scale search.
They started at the shopping centre with the aid of the shopping centre security.
With every passing minute, police concerns grow.
The first concern was that he'd been abducted.
Less than an hour after Caden goes missing, he is found. But there's no happy family reunion. The little boy's body is discovered in the harbor, some 2 miles away from the search area.
A couple on a walk came across Caden's body in the water. They pulled Caden from the water and started CPR. Unfortunately, Caden had been in there for too long and he was already dead.
The discovery of Caden's body raises more questions than answers.
How did he get there? She's a couple of miles away and he's ended up there. How did that happen in the space of time that we're talking about?
It is a mystery to the grieving mother, too.
She didn't give any idea of who had taken him or how he had disappeared.
The police discover the answer right in front of them. Security cameras are rolling on the waterfront.
The CCTV shows us the last moments of Caden's life.
It captures a car parking near the water.
You can see a person get out of the car. That person wanders around and stands at the driver's door. You can just see 2 little legs from behind.
She climbed over the rocks. That proves she wanted him dead. That proves she wanted him not to be found. She hid him away from where anyone was likely to find him.
Left at the water's edge, the toddler is soon washed away by the rising swell.
Caden's final moments must have been terrifying.
We know that her son's gone in the water and is drowning as she's watching.
By sending the search party in the wrong direction, Gemma makes certain Caden can't be revived.
Because she wanted to make sure he died. She wanted to be rid of him.
I would describe Gemma as being one of the most cold-hearted murderers that I've ever dealt with.
When Gemma realizes her every move is caught on camera, she gives up.
Gemma pleaded guilty to the charge of murder. However, she said that she didn't have the intention to kill him.
I don't believe that for a minute. Why else would she put a defenseless baby on a beach?
In May 2012, Gemma Keen is convicted of murder. She's sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 13 years.
There was no consideration for her son, her former partner, her mother, Eddie's family. There was no consideration other than, I'm free of this now.
The best solution she could come up with was murder.
Gemma is eligible for parole in 2023. She will be 35 years old, young enough to be a mom.
I think the comment was made that it was our first generation. Why murder? Why not?
This is the saddest story.
These deadly women lack the basic instinct of a mother's love. Ellen Boehm killed her children for insurance payouts. Dena Schlosser's delusions led to the darkest of murders. And Gemma Keen preferred partying to being a parent. They couldn't be trusted with their own flesh and blood. They were evil guardians.